um, every time I open the door to the office, I step onto a stage where there is a mask that you put on because you're trying to fit in. Because we were raised to respect elders, right? So never always agree with what they say, never dispute. And then you end up in workplaces where elder people are working for you. So, right? And all that has to go out the window. So you actually have to rewire yourself. And he's the kind of leader who I have cried in front of, and he would say to me, like, I'm going to cancel my meetings and I'm going to be here for you. And he said, you're not the first person on the leadership team to cry. And by the way, the rest were all men. If you can just focus on making an impact on one person through this difference that you want to make,
Yeah.
you'd be surprised about the ripple effect that will happen naturally. First is to understand your why. Like, why do you want to make a difference? What does it look like? I once had a woman say, because I want to be like you. And I said to her,
Yeah.
I'm taken, so you can't be me.
Hi, Uma, and welcome to the About Her Show, a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us, to tell us about their successes, failures, challenges, ups and downs, all of it, so that not only do they get a platform to showcase themselves, but they also help us inspire other women. Women who have dreams, ambitions, aspirations, but for some reason have not been able to follow them and have just left them, and are just existing just like that. So when they listen to such stories, somewhere they get inspired, and that's the whole point of having, women trailblazers. But of course, we also get men on the show, men who champion such, women. And when I was looking at your profile, I was mightily impressed. You being in tech, which is still, to a very large extent considered to be, male dominated. Of course, we have kind of made progress there, but still. And then from there, you decided to take this leap into the space of social justice and, in particular, women empowerment. So, very, very inspiring and very, very, how should I say, something that we need to know more about. So,
Hmm.
hence, a very, very warm welcome to you. And I'm all ears to listen to your story.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Great to be on your platform. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. So, just to get started and like an icebreaker, if you could tell us a little bit, about your journey, what inspired you to get into tech, and then what was it like to start in such a dynamic field when you did?
Well, I actually wanted to be a pianist.
Oh, okay.
And so at age 5, I was watching a show on the television with my parents, and it was an orchestra, and this pianist came out and played, and I thought, wow, I was really hooked. And
Mm-hmm.
I said to my parents, that's what I want to do. And so my grandmother bought me my first piano. I'm a
Okay.
trained classical pianist. I finished grade 8 at 15,
Wow.
wanted to go to music school after that. And as any good Indian parents will say to you, you
Mm-hmm.
will not make any money doing that.
Okay.
So you have three options.
Mhm.
You have to choose between doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
Okay.
And I grew up in Malaysia,
Okay.
and my parents didn't have money to send me to university.
Mhm.
And so I had to take a government loan.
Okay.
And when you fill up the form,
Mhm.
you need to write your 5 choices. And
Oh,
so to make them happy, I put pharmacy as my first choice.
okay.
It wasn't exactly medicine, but I thought maybe I could live with that. And
Mm-hmm.
my last choice was computer science,
Oh,
only because I was playing computer games on my Acer computer every evening. And I thought, how hard could this be?
wow.
So that's what I got. And that's how I ended up in tech.
Oh,
And my first job after graduating was an engineer in
mm-hmm.
Malaysia. And it was a fairly new industry.
Okay.
And there was this air of people in tech are cool. It's emerging. So that's kind of what I stepped into as
Mm.
a brown woman, right?
Yeah.
Um, and those spaces in tech at the time, and as you say, arguably maybe still now, wasn't built for me.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so that was like how it was like to start out in such a dynamic field. You're thrown into this space that everybody thinks it's cool, but you don't really see a lot of people like you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure this must have been full of challenges, and especially as a woman. So, what kind of challenges did you face, and how did you overcome them?
I remember my boss at that first company giving me an opportunity to present
Mm-hmm.
to a room of people about a new technology that I was supposed to learn.
Okay.
And I remember standing in front of them. I practiced, I rehearsed. They were just a room of older people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I over prepared. I was nervous. And, there I was thinking, like, why would they listen to me?
Yeah.
And and I was looking for validation. I was looking for the eye rolling, right? The crossed arms. And I was seeking them out because I was already walking in with my own self-limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it just validated when it happened that, yeah, they're not listening to me and they have no idea what I'm saying. And this is, I'm not being very useful here.
Mm.
And so what I did was, as part of compensating for my own self-limiting beliefs, I went out and got every single certification
Okay.
for IBM, I was working for an IBM distributor,
Okay.
and I became the second most certified person in Malaysia.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so that was my way of compensating, overcompensating, one might argue.
Okay.
And so, but I just felt like that was what gave me the confidence in the
Mm.
beginning
Yeah.
to go, well, now you have to listen to me because I just spent hours of my time taking exams and, learning all this stuff. So I know more than you. And so this is just one of many stories of spaces where I didn't belong and it wasn't made for someone who looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my stories is about over rotating to kind of overcome that in the very beginning. I only changed that approach when I felt comfortable in my own skin, in what I saw in the mirror. And that didn't happen for a very long time for me.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you looked up the challenge, you saw it as an opportunity for you to learn something, to grow. You looked it in the eye and said, okay, I'm going to take you on and I'm going to be probably better than you. I mean, what better way can there be to face a challenge than this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, of course, you were in tech for, quite some time and then you shifted. So, at what point did your focus shift from tech to championing social justice and women empowerment? And I mean, what inspired this transition?
So I would say there's two stories behind this.
Okay.
And the first story is when I'm still living in Malaysia. I'm 25 years old,
Hmm.
and I had a best friend who studied computer science with me in university.
Okay.
And her name is Gauri. We
Hmm.
were 25, and there was this beauty pageant going on.
Okay.
And we said, okay, the last age that qualifies is 25. Like, we either do it this year or we don't.
Hmm.
And we simply just did it for the fun of it. Okay. We had like no aspirations. We wanted to get some laughs out of it.
Hmm.
We both ended up in the finals somehow, but we laughed our way through the whole thing. But as part of taking part in that, there was a session around your own career development.
Okay.
And there was this woman that was in the room, and she taught us about how to write a resume, how to dress for work, like Indian women, maybe you should shave your arms, like all these things that, my mom didn't tell me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what to do, right? So, and I felt like, oh my gosh, like I feel so privileged to be in this room. And I'm just wondering how many other women who are not going to be as privileged, who are going to miss out on this kind of knowledge. So that was kind of the first hint.
Okay.
Then the second one came in 2015, and I'm in the elevator, and someone that I've been talking to a lot about, this like, I want to do something for women. I never focused on it earlier because I was just too busy to make money to survive and to,
Mhm.
like figure out life. Then when I got there, this person said, have you read the book Lean In?
Okay.
Um, then I read it, I couldn't put it down, and suddenly there was an explanation for so many things that was happening to me in the workplace. So it was this light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, like I'm not alone and there's an explanation and there's something I can do about it. That was then about a year before 2016 when my mentor asked me this question.
Okay.
What would you do if you had all the time and money in the world?
Mhm.
And he's a multiple time CEO at the time, and he would admit he did not know how to answer that question himself.
Mhm.
And he said a lot of people don't know because we keep chasing something. After we achieve something, we want to achieve the next thing. So really, if you had all the time and money in the world, what would you do? That's the question to ask.
Mhm.
And so I said, I want to help women. I have no idea how.
Mhm.
And um, there was an event. I met Helen Dews at INSEAD, and that was the beginning of Lean in Singapore being born. And the first taste of what it's like to build something bigger than yourself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Building something bigger than yourself. I think it really needs a mindset shift to understand this, to, understand actually what this means. We all are constantly chasing things and largely material things for our own selves. We,
Yeah.
I don't think we ever, most of us, never, pause to think about others and doing something which is more about them than about us. So kudos to you. Absolutely. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think, like being transparent, I had to meet my own needs first,
Yes.
right? I needed to have enough money, a roof over my head, have some level of confidence. I mean, I was no gender expert, diversity expert. Like, if somebody told me in my 20s I was going to be the founder of Lead in Singapore, I would have laughed at them, right? So that I was going to lead a movement that became a 7,000 woman community.
Mhm.
So, and I think this is a great lesson for me, maybe for others, in that there is something that we can all do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the most least expected thing, but if you focus on impact,
Yeah.
then that's all you need to do, have a positive impact on one person.
That's true. That's true. And, it may be a drop in the ocean to begin with, but then every drop counts. And ultimately, it's all the drops together that make the ocean. So, yeah.
The ripple effect, well
Yes.
said.
Absolutely. All right. So, how did your background in tech, influence your approach to fostering inclusion and, drive change for women? I mean, did that have any impact on it or no?
Absolutely. Tech, when I started, less so now, but was very male dominated. In fact, it was very hard to find a woman
Mm.
that I could see, and then let alone a brown woman. And so what I know is that when I opened the door to walk into the office, even as a vice president for
Mhm.
Asia Pacific and Japan, running sales, right,
Yeah.
for very large teams, every time I open the door to the office, I step onto a stage where there is a mask that you put on because you're trying to fit in, right? I'm an introvert, for example, at my resting state. And that doesn't work well in an environment when you're in sales, you're leading sales, you are supposed to speak up, you need to be visible, you need to be aggressive, but then you're penalized when you do all of those things because that's not how you are expected to show up. This is cognitive dissonance.
Mm.
I anticipate someone who looks like you to speak and act a certain way. Now you're not. And my brain doesn't understand this, so this must be wrong, so I'm going to penalize you, right? So this walking the tightrope, and it's exhausting, yes, but that's how unconscious bias works. It's always going to be there. And so just learning from my own experience certainly had a big influence in how I thought about inclusion and driving change for women, because I was never the person that started thinking about women in the first place. I was acting like a man. I wore pants for the first 10 years of my career. And then I imposed that same rigidity on other women, right? Because I didn't know better, because I was like, well, if all we see are men, I guess we should act and speak like them. Therefore, you should too. So it's not like I started off being someone that thought about inclusion at all. It was only as I made all of those mistakes and then got to a place where I was comfortable in life that I could start thinking about, oh, well, you know. And then, I got a 360 report in black and white that really said that I was not an easy person to work with. So that's, so all of those things, really helped me think about how I am as a leader, and then, really what can I do to help other women to build confidence, etc., and give them the tools that I wish I had earlier.
You're so right. There's nothing like experience teaching you. You know, we are not all born, doing things or wanting to do things. It's sometimes, and in fact, of course, initial years of our lives, we end up doing what we are told to do, maybe even in terms of our professions and all of that. But as we grow and evolve in life, as we experience things, that's how, we learn to do different things and think differently. So you're so right. There's nothing like experience. In fact, I can resonate with you in this way because even my platform is the result of the life that I have led, the experiences that I have had. And I definitely would not want other women to go through such experiences and maybe, educate them about those experiences as much as I can. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, of course, we look at challenges, and what I have, discovered or realized, in the course of these conversations that I've had with women across the world is that women everywhere are the same. We may have, different cultures, different backgrounds. We may be passing through different stages of life, but, at basically we're all the same and we face similar kind of challenges. And that's why it is critical for us to rise up and be there for each other.
Yeah.
So now, when you talk about gender equality and you look around you, so what are some of the most significant challenges that women in Asia face today when it comes to gender equality and especially in professional settings?
Yeah. Look, there are quite a few, but the big one for me that I see every day and what I experience myself is confidence.
Okay.
And I think even this word, right? When you say this word, the
Mm.
first image you're unlikely to think of is a woman.
Okay.
When you say confidence, you think of power, you think of a man in a suit talking to a microphone. Maybe he's white, even, right? Um, you think of someone who speaks loudly, and all of these things are very much against the way we are raised in Asia. I mean, I was taught to listen first before speaking, right? In fact, speak last.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you're thought to be quiet and demure as a girl, right? Girls be careful, but boys be brave, right? And so I think this is it's the most commonly asked question that I get. And I want to offer a couple of insights to this. Confidence for me certainly was I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. I mean, my mother gave me Fair and Lovely to use when I was growing up.
Okay. All right.
Um, this is a cream that anyone in India is going to know. And I was too dark, apparently. And my mom was much lighter skinned. And she felt like, I should look a certain way. Like my skin needs to be lighter because I also grew up in a country that associated success and beauty with being that skin color, right? So my confidence, and then, I had like buck teeth. My parents gave me braces, thank God. And I was skinny, I was awkward. I didn't get attention from boys till I left home, lost a lot of weight, went
Mm.
to university. So, I didn't really like myself till I was in my 30s.
Okay.
And I think that really transpires into the workplace. How you feel about yourself. There is no separation that you feel this way at home, and then suddenly you're confident in the workplace, right? So for a while, I had to fake it.
Yeah.
And my definition of faking it is, for example, I get someone who would do something really well. I'd record them speaking, and then I'll speak exactly like them and just rehearse their script word for word. And then, you know, um, so I would fake my way. So there's two things that I have found that have been a confidence tool or hack. The first is, comes back to lean in, and it is having a circle. Circles are the concept of peer-to-peer mentorship. So women that are in very similar life stages as you come together, you meet monthly, and it's not the same as having friends.
Yeah.
There's a friendship text when people tell you the truth with your friends, but in a circle, there is no friendship text. So
Mm.
you show up and be fabulously messy, ambitious, whatever.
Yeah.
And we tell you, what you need to hear. There are hundreds of circles in Singapore now. Since we started, I think it's the most powerful thing a woman can do for her career, having a circle. The second confidence hack, and in fact, I was just speaking to a woman today who haven't been able to find a job.
Okay.
Redundancy, restructuring is quite the norm today, but still there is shame and stigma tied to it.
Mhm.
And she hasn't been able to find a job for a year. And she said, I show up to an interview and then I lose all confidence. I leave the call and I go, but I should have said that. I messed up saying this. And, we say these voices in our head and we beat ourselves up because we hold ourselves
Yeah.
to much higher standards. And then we make assumptions about what people think about us, which are more than often not true.
Mm.
So here's the confidence hack I asked her to think about. So I asked her, how many jobs have you done in your career? She said 6. I said, I want you to think about in all of those 6 jobs, why do you think they gave you that role? They chose you
Yeah.
because they could have chosen anyone else
Mm.
to
Mm.
give that job to, right? And these are not stupid people. They're very smart people who are making these decisions. So think about that. And then before you go into your next interview, look at that piece of paper that reminds you why you were hired in those 6 jobs in the first place. So yeah, I think, with the women that are in my community and that I get to speak to every day, confidence is a big one.
Yeah, actually, you're so, so true. I think we are largely in Asia, of course, we are not raised to be confident. You're told to listen, let others speak, because there is that whole drama about, your future life and you getting married and going to somebody's house. All that, I think, is playing at the background. And so the parents somehow, they just manage to make girls underconfident. Of course, things are changing now. They've changed in a big way. And now girls, I think, are confident than ever before, more than ever before. But yes, confidence is something that is definitely required. Okay.
Yeah, and then we forgot about, the multi-generational workforce we're in now, because we were raised to respect elders, right? So never always agree with what they say, never dispute, and then you end up in workplaces where elder people are working for you. So, right? And all that has to go out the window. So you actually have to rewire
Yes,
yourself.
absolutely. All right. So, growing up, I'm sure, you had people who you looked up to as mentors or as role models. Like we always have, certain stages of our lives, we look up to a person and then the stage passes and we, find somebody else. So, if you were to think back and reflect on your life, then who have been the key figures when it comes to role models or mentors who shaped your vision and work both in your, your tech journey and now social justice?
Well, my mom certainly is one. They never kind of stopped me other than, not being a pianist, but really didn't define anything for me. But she was very entrepreneurial. We didn't have a lot of money. And
Mm.
I learned about making extra money from her. She
Okay.
would make curry powder because people loved her curry.
Okay.
And she would make us bag it and sell it for like 2 ringgit to people who would buy it. In addition to her salary as a nurse, my dad had to give up his job, so she was the breadwinner,
Hmm.
right? So just watching someone was holding a full-time job, running the household, earning the money, and then trying to earn extra money, right? So that was the environment that I kind of grew up in. Then my uncle who worked in the big city. I grew up in a small, tiny city called Johor Bahru. My uncle was working in a bank and he would bring these business magazines to me. I didn't know what I was reading. I started reading them when I was 9,
Okay.
but I would see like all these pages of what successful people look like. They had the corner office, they
Yeah.
were wearing nice clothes, they were traveling around the world. And I was like, that was my first visualization,
Hmm.
let's say.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, one day I'm going to do this. So in my early years, those two people.
Okay. All right. And moving along. N-
Um, so many. It'll
Yeah.
be hard to name them, but I'll call out one. I worked for a great leader at VMware called Duncan Hewitt,
Okay.
and he's written a book called Accelerating Women. And the type of leader he is, in fact, he was the person behind Project Tara in India
Hmm.
that has brought 18,000 women back to work, where we give them free digitization skills and we partner with other companies to place them. And he's the kind of leader who I have cried in front of, and he would say to me, like, I'm going to cancel my meetings and I'm going to be here for you. And he said, you're not the first person on the leadership team to cry. And by the way, the rest were all men.
Hmm.
So this is huge psychological safety with him.
Yeah.
And there was, he was so sensitive to inclusion. If we were all on a Zoom call,
Yeah.
he would private messaging all the women
Okay.
and he would be telling each of us, hey, I'm going to say this, and then I want you to come in to talk about this thing you're working on. So all of us always got a voice. And then you got the heads up, so you weren't surprised.
Yeah.
That was the level of inclusion that was very inspiring for me. And I learned so much from him.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, for anyone to do that, it's
Yeah.
huge because I think a lot of men don't think, I mean, even if they don't have exclusion in mind as such, they would never make that extra effort or walk that extra mile to include someone. So, really commendable. Okay.
Yeah. And that's a great sentence. If you're not consciously including,
Yeah.
you are unconsciously excluding.
Absolutely. That is actually spot on. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, Uma, if someone is really passionate about making a difference, and particularly in the space in which you are now, that is women empowerment, what three actionable steps would you recommend they take?
Yeah. I would say the first is to understand your why. Like, why do you want to make a difference? What does it look like? I once had a woman say, because I want to be like you. And I said to her,
Yeah.
I'm taken, so you can't be me.
Okay. Hmm.
And that's not a why,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it's got to be some emotional, personal story behind it, like understanding your why is first. Otherwise, it's only going to last for so long. The
Right.
second is to start with people around you. Before Lead In, I started talking to a bunch of women around the office. And I booked a meeting room and I'm like, free conversation, just come. And I didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah.
but start with the people around you. You don't have to go big. And then the third, I would say, is focus on the impact of one. We talked about the ripple effect earlier. It
Yeah.
really comes down to that. If you can just focus on making an impact on one person through this difference that you want to make,
Yeah.
you'd be surprised about the ripple effect that will happen naturally.
Yeah.
So don't think hundreds of thousands, think one.
That is so true. Think one. Just take that step. You take that one little step and you
Yeah.
don't know where it will take you. So, yeah. So, very useful tips. All right. So, of course, setbacks, disappointments, resistance, all these are part and parcel of our lives, both personal
Yeah.
and professional. So, I'm sure you faced several in your life. But having faced those, how have you stayed motivated and how do you push yourself during difficult times?
Yeah, so I have faced everything from, being rejected for jobs to, um, sexual harassment in the workplace to microaggressions, gaslighting, you know, um, everything that a lot of women go through. So I would say, look, unless I'm waking up and feeling for a consistent period that work really sucks, then
Mm,
I'm trying to find the lessons in them.
okay.
Um, is it an opportunity for me to do something about it? Is it an opportunity to build resilience? Because difficult times are either very personal. So what's happening with me? Uma as an individual, why do I feel like I need to micromanage? That's about me, not about the team,
Yeah.
right? So something's happening, I need to figure that out. Or difficult characters, you have to work with difficult people.
Mm,
Whatever your definition of difficult people is, that for me is one of the most unspoken skills to actually get to leadership is your ability to work with difficult people. So if you can build muscles around that, then you can work in any environment and
yeah.
get people to come on board with you, right? So that's kind of how I think about staying motivated and just taking that step forward.
Mm,
Unless this is really affecting me in a way that like consistently for days and months,
mm,
for me, it's an opportunity. That's the first reframe.
yeah.
Then
Yeah.
figuring out, okay, is it personal to me or is it about somebody else? And what can I do about it?
Right. Right. I think that is so, so essential because even I feel that every setback, every disappointment is actually an opportunity. It is trying to teach you something. It is trying to tell you something. So, yeah, you may want to wallow in self pity for a while. That's also okay. Have a small pity party for a while. But then you've
Yeah.
got to pull yourself up, look at what it is trying to tell you, and then move on from there. Right? Yeah. So tell me, Uma, how do you see women's voices and leadership transforming industries like tech and also reshaping societal norms across Asia?
That's a big question. Okay.
Yes.
Look, I think leadership for me has always been about the opportunity to do things differently instead of following a playbook.
All right.
And I remember being the only woman in a room full of seasoned men during one of my early roles in tech. And I felt the subtle exclusion, the unspoken rules that kept me out of, after hours networking or decision-making spaces, right? I was told I should take up golf. I never did. So instead of waiting for an invitation, I showed up anyway. I'd invite myself into those spaces. I just said, okay, I'll see you there when I heard about some networking drinks I wasn't invited to.
Mhm.
So that small act, wasn't just about me, but it's showing that women can take up space unapologetically. And that experience kind of shaped my belief on women's leadership, that it's isn't about power. It's big, and that's what makes it inherently transformative.
Hmm.
Women in leadership isn't about power, it's about presence. It's about rewriting norms.
Hmm.
It's about challenging ideas that authority has to come from the person who speaks the loudest.
Hmm.
I think women bring creativity, connection. We have this unique ability to build trust. And in tech, I've just seen how these qualities have led to better collaboration, better innovation,
Yeah.
because we challenge status quo very differently. We're not speaking the loudest, right? But by the time we're there to challenge, you better bet there's like buses of people behind us, right? And and I think we do this because we see the cracks more clearly.
Yes.
So when I think about across Asia, and I've had the opportunity to travel across many countries because of my roles, I see women redefining leadership by moving from control to influence. And they're not just asking, how do I succeed? But they're asking, how do I bring others along? I think this is the biggest difference. And this approach, I think, will reshape industries. It reshapes modern leadership, reshapes cultural norms. So we talk about the, breaking glass ceilings before, or bamboo ceilings here in Asia.
Yeah.
Um, but I think with women, we think about redesigning the entire structure. There is no glass, there is no bamboo. It's just a structure where everybody is welcome. And I think that's the advantage we have.
So well said. We are not, we are more holistic in our approach and in our attitude towards everything. It's about taking everyone together and not just one of us who happens to be the leader who's, forging ahead. You're taking everyone with you. And that is huge. And that's
Yeah,
how I think all along women have kept families together too, because we have this trait. And now what we've done for families, we can do for organizations equally well, if not better. All right.
absolutely.
Soma, mental health is something that has come up in a big way, especially, after COVID. And in India, we've seen, people are accepting and acknowledging that there are these kind of issues. But do you think women's mental health gets as much attention as it should?
I think mental health is still picking up. I remember during the pandemic, we had one employee come on to a call that had all of our employees across Asia and speak openly about his breakdown. It was a man, and it was considered, game changing and revolutionary because no one was doing that, right? Um, and I think it's become its own animal now, mental health, and some leaders worry about how it's being abused,
Okay.
even,
Mhm.
right? About, if something gets difficult, oh, sorry, this is affecting my mental health, right? Depending on which generation
Yeah,
you
yeah.
come from.
Mm.
So, look, I think I can only speak to my own story. And for me, a huge part of my mental health has been going to therapy last year,
Yeah.
and this has given me so much clarity about who I am. I did psychotherapy with the Hoffman process, and it's just opened my eyes on so many things that I didn't know about myself. And that has given me the resilience on my own mental health. It's given me understanding about what I should give energy to and what I don't. And how do I communicate that to somebody without feeling like I am putting up a barrier between me and them? So I think any form of health,
Yeah.
if we have power, privilege, and platform like the platform you have, we should be using that.
Right.
I yesterday, well, Sunday, um, just went out on LinkedIn and said, I'm going to share my perimenopause diaries every Sunday.
Mm.
So we need to talk about it. I'm 47, and I've been bouncing around all different kinds of professionals, and no one's given me answers I needed, and I had to connect the dots over 4 years. So now if I can speed that up for other women, why not? So, especially women who can't afford expert advice.
Right.
So I think health in general doesn't get enough attention as it relates to women.
So, Uma, for those people who are considering a career change, especially in their midlives, which I
Mm.
like to term as midlife rebooting. When you decide to switch tracks and do something either in addition to what you're currently doing, or, as a complete break from what you were doing and, starting to do something new. So, first of all,
Yeah.
what are your views on this kind of a change? And what advice would you offer, to these people to make them take that leap?
So, as you rightly said, Sangeeta, I think ideally you want to start something while you still have a full-time job.
Okay.
unless you have the financial capacity to do so,
Mhm.
because you don't want the stress of financials to navigate you in ways that you would make the wrong decisions in your
Right.
business,
Correct.
whatever it is that you choose to do,
Mm.
right? So you want to remove any financial pressure as much as possible. So ideally, you start it when you have a monthly paycheck coming in.
Okay.
So that's the first advice. Start small, start something. Now, what do you start? This is a question I get often. And a lot of times people tend to listen to some podcast, read some book, and then they watch other people go into business X and make money, and they think they should do the same thing,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And you should be able to answer a few things, right? So what's the critical need you're addressing? Why not you? Why you and not someone else?
Okay.
Right? What makes you the expert, right? Is there a personal story or emotion behind this? Or is it just to make money? Because if it's so, it's only going to last
Yeah.
to a certain stage,
Yeah.
right? So I would say those are some fundamentals. For myself specifically, what I have decided to do is to build the business around my lifestyle, not the other way around.
All right.
And so, for example, I'm doing things that I wouldn't get to do. I remember Mondays, actually, I remember Sunday nights I would log on onto my laptop because I don't like waking up Monday morning with this stress of answering emails, and then I have to get ready for a forecast call at 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And before I get ready for a forecast call, I got to look at 3 different files, and then I run a bunch of calls to prep. I even eat my lunch on Mondays at my desk in the office because I don't have time to go out. So now
Yeah.
I have no meetings until after lunch on Mondays because I get to do that. That's what I mean by building a business around your lifestyle, because other things become more important for me. My quality of life, my health, my levels of stress. I want to spend more time with family, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
So, what is important to you? What is your definition of a rich life?
Yes.
And when you are midlife and making this transition, that would be a big thing to consider. And that is an important KPI that I have.
Mhm. I think that's very important. It cannot be something which you've seen others doing, making a success of, and you think or you believe that you can replicate that story. You don't
Yeah.
know what went behind all that. So I think it's also important. Though I'm sure that, in your midlife, nobody's going to take a rash decision because you do have responsibilities and you do have families, and all of that. But still, I think, yes, just carrying out that research, doing a bit of soul searching and understanding what is it, like you said, why do you want to do that I think is very, very critical. That why I think we need to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much testing that you need to do. Everybody tells you that in your first year of building a company, all your assumptions will go out the window, right? Everybody says that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I started building the Elevate group, and despite knowing better because I built Lean In
Mhm.
as a nonprofit company, I was like, I'm better. I'm more experienced.
Yeah.
So all my assumptions, some will be wrong, but they will mostly be right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I went through exactly the same thing.
Hmm.
Like most of our assumptions had to be thrown out the window.
Right.
So your success at year one, for me, is not about whether your company is profitable. It's whether did you do the right activities to get the right learnings for you to pivot at the end of year one to make the changes going into year two.
Correct. Correct. Very well said. All right. So now your future aspirations, your goals for advancing social justice and inclusion, and how do you envision the future for women in Asia?
Yeah, another big question. Um, Look, my current goals on social justice and inclusion is very deeply tied to amplifying the voices of women.
Yeah.
And thank you for creating this platform as well. I'm so glad to share it with you. And how do we create tangible opportunities for their growth?
Yeah.
And one of the ways I'm doing this is through my podcast, Raw with Uma,
Mm.
where I focus on the unfiltered stories of Asian working women.
Mm.
And these are women who will never get to be in the spotlight. And I want to put the spotlight on them.
Mm.
And so I delve into their thoughts and fears and, what are they navigating, and this is just from season one, a woman who had tongue cancer and half her tongue is constructed from her leg and she
Mm.
had to learn how to speak again, right? And she's 50 and asking big questions about her life. So all these stories need to be told to a woman that had to struggle with invisible disability, because if you can't see it, people think you're normal
Yeah.
and you struggle, right? So I think like these stories are so important. So understanding what truly goes on the minds of women in Asia, that's a big part of my current goal. Um, and then beyond the storytelling, I'm trying to create systems of support. So that's through the Elevate group. I'm taking everything I know and giving that knowledge to women. For example, we're about to launch, how to go from a hidden talent to a visible leader in 4 weeks. And that will be an online course. And it's just tools like this. And so that hopefully women can fast track whatever challenges that they're navigating. You said at the very start, a lot of us are, if not all of us, are similar in
Yes.
challenges
Yes.
and how we think and feel, right? Maybe the context is slightly different, but behind every woman's question, there's hundreds like her.
Yeah.
And then my ultimate hope is to build a global platform where I'm doing the Oprah moment, where I get to say like to all the women in the audience, and it's, a big TV show on Netflix, and it's like you get a job and you get a mentor and you get a sponsor,
Yeah.
you get a network, So that's my big dream, that I can get to build a global movement that can drive tangible change. So I thank you for the opportunity to share a small part of my story in hope that it resonates with your audience a little bit and they take away something.
I'm sure they will, because like I said, all women basically are the same. We go
Yeah.
through different experiences, but each experience can and does teach everyone something. You just have to be open and receptive about receiving that. You can learn. There is no limit to what you can learn and how you can learn. You just have to be open about it. So, all the best to you, Uma. I'm sure you will make a huge, huge success of it. And maybe, when you are a global Oprah, we will have another chance to have you on the show. Yeah. So, but
Ab-
before we end, we do have the
Yeah.
rapid fire round. Yes. 5
Okay.
quick questions, 5 quick answers. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we all set?
Sure. I
All
don't know
right.
what you're gonna ask, but okay.
Okay. The first question. What is your
Yes.
favorite piece of technology?
What is my favorite piece of technology? Wow. Gosh,
You're from tech. So,
I know, like I should, this is such a simple question, but so hard to answer. Okay, I'll tell you what my current favorite piece of tech is.
yeah.
And it's the wireless microphones.
Oh, yes, yes.
Because
Yeah,
because you get to just go anywhere, plug it into your phone and record any piece of content. And as a creator, that's a game changer because the quality of audio today needs to be at such a great level for people to want to listen.
I agree. I completely agree with
So
you. All
I
right.
use the mic wireless microphone.
Nice.
That's there
Very
you
nice.
go.
All right. The next question. What is your go-to after work activity?
I walk my dog Nika. She's a 3-year-old Labradoodle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like walking has been such a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Of course, I want to clear the zoo in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not going to be done in 20 minutes because I've got such a big zoo. I don't know what about you, but it helps to just, burn off the energy.
Yeah.
And for women, you don't want, when there's stress, cortisol stores as fat, so it helps to walk at the end of the day. So I do that.
Okay. Next question. One word that describes you.
Raw.
All right. Interesting. Okay. Next. If you had a magic wand, what is the first thing you'd like to change about the world?
About the world. I would say I would love that someone sprinkled a fairy dust and we all had kindness as this DNA that runs through us.
Yes. So required everywhere, in every part, in every nook and corner of the world. Kindness is one thing that we definitely need. All right. And so now we come to the last question. Your favorite book or podcast?
My favorite podcast is Diary of the CEO by Stephen Bartlett.
All right. Yes.
He pushes out so much content. It's the only one I really have time to listen to, but I've learned so much and grown so much from it. So it really talks about so many things that we're navigating in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I'm walking, I'm listening to that.
All right. And a book?
Oh, I have so many favorites, but I love, one of my favorites is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay. All right.
I couldn't put that book down, and it just gives you an insight into all the situations that allowed people to get a competitive advantage. The real story of Bill Gates, for example, was because his mom was a teacher and they lived close to this university in Washington. And because she thought that he could sneak into the lab and get extra hours.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all little things, right? That actually propel people in different paths.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's very important to know those little details. Other than the fluff and the stories which you find in the media, I think the real stories are the ones that you really need to listen to. All right.
Yeah.
So with that, we come to the end of this conversation, and I can truly say this has been an extremely inspiring, conversation because, I am part of the same space. So when you hear and when you see other women talk about something that so resonates with you, it just kind of charges you, once you get into action and do more and more and more. And that's what you've done to me. And I'm sure you will do this to our listeners and viewers as well. So thank you so much, Uma, for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure to have you.
And thank you, Sangeeta, for your energy and building this platform. I'm sure you're inspiring so many. And thank you for having me.
I hope so. And thank you once again.
Thank you for tuning in to the AboutHer Show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the AboutHer Show.